Great, welcome everybody. You are in the right place if you're here for the introductory session on power and the collaborative leadership certification program. And I'm Rebecca. I'm the communications wizard here at Round Sky Solutions. Thank you for joining us. And first of all, I just wanted to say that in this call, we have leaders who have registered from all over the US and spread across the globe and in all kinds of different time zones. So thank you for being here from wherever you are. And some of you work at worker cooperatives, some of you work at nonprofits, or conscious businesses, collectives, and some of you are coming as you are as coaches or just individuals caring about cooperative leadership and power. So thanks for being here. We have a pretty diverse crowd in terms of space and work that we've all come together here. So I'm excited to dive a bit deeper into understanding those power dynamics with you all. And you're in the right place if you're craving a space to dive a bit deeper into something that has happened in the past year or in whatever amount of time that was just really messy, or maybe it's an ongoing thing for you. We're happy to talk about both. Power shows up in lots of ways. And collaboration can be hard. It's a learned skill. We're not really taught that in school, and it's really so worth it to dive into really how to do it. And one thing that a participant said to me in a past training is that she didn't realize that this could be learned. She just thought that she didn't have the right type of personality in order to collaborate. And we're here to say that it's not about personality, although maybe it might be easier if you're more easygoing, but in reality, we need all types of personalities that can just be honest at the table. So thanks for being here. And so many of you know us, but I want to share just 3 quick things about Round Sky. The first is that Round Sky is a worker cooperative, a worker-owned cooperative. And many people don't know that about us, but we're working on sharing about why that's important to us this year. And we work with all types of leaders, aspiring leaders, and organizations that value and want to improve their democratic and participatory processes. And the second thing is that Round Sky offers different free things to the community, like this introductory session to support people working through those tricky dynamics that come up in collaboration. And we also offered last year things like strategic planning, personal assessment, remote collaboration, and work around founder syndrome in different webinars. And we are planning to continue to do that. They tend to be a really good place for people to get some quick information from us. And we also offered a free spring cleaning power challenge this spring. So if you're interested in that, it's still open. There's the link right here on the screen. It's just like a 5-day quick challenge, kind of a longer version of this call in some ways. And then the last thing is one of our core strategic initiatives of 2018 and of this year is our collaborative leadership certification program, level 1 and level 2. Last year, we did a lot of things to make it more accessible. We made it online, and we offered scholarships to people, and it worked out pretty well for everyone involved. So we're really excited to continue doing that and continue evolving the program and helping our students hone on the skills and leadership development that our cooperative world needs, so specific cooperative leadership skills. And so I will tell you a little bit more about that program at the end of this call, so if you're curious about that. And now moving on to logistics, and then we'll get into some good stuff. So back up one. So for the logistics of this call, this will be recorded. If you have any questions or to answer our questions, you'll type them in the chat box, and you can do that by finding that in the toolbar if you're new to this program. It should be a speaking bubble, and you can introduce yourself to all attendees, and Cecile will type hello in the chat box so it pops up on your screen. Or you can, if you have clarifying questions, you can reach out to Round Sky, which is me, and I can help any technical things or clarify things for you as we go. Or if you want to say hello to someone, you can do that. You can say hello to whoever on the call. I will share this recording out after this meeting, and we'll also have some time in breakout groups, and that's not recorded, so feel free to be as candid as you'd like if you don't want something, if you're worried about something being recorded. That's not. And in general, we'll be keeping everyone on mute so that we can focus on the speakers. Our microphones have a really good way of picking up things on these kind of calls, so I may mute you if you come on, not to interrupt you, but just to have that kind of sound space. Okay, with that, let's do some introductions. So if you could, in that chat box, let us know your name, what brought you to this call today, and one question that you have on your mind or heart. And each of you can share that in the chat box as we go and say hello to each other. Be friendly if you'd like. And while you do that, I will introduce myself. So like I said, I'm Rebecca. I currently live and have been in New Orleans for about 5 years. I'm originally from California. I'm really excited to be a part of this conversation today because collaborative leadership has come up in so many different contexts of my life. And I'm sure you can relate that when collaboration is not working and when harmful power dynamics are not corrected, it's really uncomfortable and can be overwhelming to figure out how to move forward with some of the teams that I've personally been a part of in the past. So I'm energized to talk about how we can create humanizing, supported leadership and collaboration during this call. So I'll pass it to Cecile now to introduce herself.
Yeah, thanks, Rebecca, and thanks, everyone. I'm delighted to be here today with you all. I'm Cecile Green, one of the co-founders of Round Sky Solutions and the primary instructor for our certification course. I live near Montpelier, Vermont, in the heart of the Green Mountains, and I've been a social entrepreneur for over 30 years. Really had a wide range of different organizations that I've helped to start, and I've published Collaboration That Works, a ruthlessly practical handbook for a generative world, as a training manual that summarizes the research I've done into common power dynamics at work, and really offers a synthesis of over a dozen different collaborative methodologies into a set of practices for healthy shared power. And the most exciting thing for me today about the call today is just getting to know each of you and this community space for exploring our collaborative leadership needs and goals and how we share power and how we work through the difficult dynamics that happen in our workplaces. So thanks for being here.
Great, welcome, Cecile. And I want to let Jeanette, one of our students in our current cohorts, introduce herself. She'll be sharing some examples later. So Jeanette, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Jeanette. I am based in Philly. I work with the Philadelphia Area Cooperative Alliance as a co-op developer, and I am currently in the Course 1 class.
Nice. Thanks for being here. And we have some other folks on the call that are in the course as well to answer questions, and I'll let them introduce themselves more fully in the chat box for now. And with that, I'll pass it back to you, Cecile.
Wonderful. Well, let's dive right in. We'll start off with looking at what power is together. Really, the term power gets used in so many different ways by different people. It really emphasizes the need to clarify what we mean by power as we embark on this journey together on the call today. And in my time researching into organizational dysfunction, I formed a hypothesis that at the root of all organizational waste and dysfunction lies the misuse and the misdistribution of power. And in order to proceed with that hypothesis and do further research, I needed to define what power was. In other words, what are we really talking about? Because the term is used in so many different ways. What I found is that the definition that was both the most broad and the most neutral, power as the force of enactment, was the most helpful because it enabled us to integrate lots of existing definitions under that larger umbrella, including understanding which kinds of power are the most relevant and impactful as we work together, as we're getting stuff done, whether at large or small scale. So the philosopher Paul Tillich's definition of power as the drive of every living thing to realize itself with increasing intensity and extensity was helpful in defining power as the force of enactment. One of the interesting things to note about this definition is that it doesn't define power as inherently evil or harm creating, but it does leave room for us to articulate the difference between harmful and generative forms of power, social power in particular. Being able to distinguish between harmful and toxic and generative ways of using power makes it room for us to identify what we can concretely do every day to transform toxic power into generative power. So to enable that to happen, I formulated this power matrix, which was created within that very broad definition of power as the force of enactment. And it essentially represents 4 different kinds of operationally or organizationally relevant power. And what do I mean by that? It's really that these 4 different kinds of power are types that we experience at work, not the only ones, but key forms of power that impact us and our organizations really every day. So let's start at the top of the power matrix with autonomous power, which is the capacity of any single entity to enact of its own volition. An example of this might be a homeowner choosing the color of paint for their house, or a commuter choosing to take the train instead of driving. Then there's collective power, which flows from from the will of the many. And an example of this kind of power might be a fundraising team choosing to run a major donor campaign, or a functioning democracy where people participate directly in governing. And on the horizontal axis, we have implicit power on the left, and that's the power that flows from our assumptions and unconscious habits. For example, there's the power of peer pressure, or the power someone has to influence outcomes by having the time and resources to participate more than other people. And those are all different forms of implicit power. Explicit power, on the other hand, comes from socially sanctioned roles. For example, the power a traditional boss has to enforce the policies that they make, or the power a highway department has to close roads to do repairs. So let me also give you an example of how these forms of power play out in a real life work example. I know one of the students we worked with had formerly worked in a restaurant with an owner who had been in charge for 18 years. And he used what's commonly called old school or hierarchical management style. He ran a tight ship and tended to use his explicit autonomous power as the owner to micromanage in a harshly perfectionistic way. In reaction, the manager and the staff often tried to anticipate what would trigger him so as to avoid further conflict. In this particular example, the power that the owner wields is both explicit, because he's the owner, and implicit. It's partially explicit autonomous power because he's both the owner and he has very clear and high standards and wants things done his way. It's also implicit because he often doesn't overtly state exactly what he wants or how he wants things done. Nothing is written down. And he often changes his mind about things, yet he expects the staff to do his bidding perfectly, essentially. The staff, lacking the sort of clear, explicit, collective power to ask for what they need, to ask for the clarity, try to implicitly, collectively anticipate what might set the boss off, and tiptoe around for fear of retribution. And this led to a lot of turnover in personnel. This high turnover, in turn, further reinforced the boss's sense that he never had people he could trust and therefore must micromanage everyone. So the lesson really learned from this particular instance, this example, is that making your expectations explicit and also ideally consented to by the whole team makes a huge difference in terms of how power plays out. And in ways that benefit both sides, both the boss and the workers and the staff would have been much, much happier if they had made the expectations explicit.
Mm-hmm. If I might just jump in there, I think that piece that you said about the staff quitting and then that kind of reinforcing for the boss that he can't trust anybody is such a common dynamic. I feel like it just keeps kind of reinforcing itself, that if that power isn't actually pieced out about why, and that person doesn't get to think more, get more self-aware about why people are quitting, and those, it's just so common.
Yes, indeed. Painfully common, shall we say.
Yes.
All right. Well, to dig in a little more, I find the power matrix an interesting theoretical perspective on power, but I was particularly interested in practical applications. And today on the call, I'm going to highlight 2 of them. And then we're going to actually practice using it together here on the call, so you get a little bit of a taste of how it can help you. The first application is to use the power matrix to analyze our experience and identify where the use of power has sort of gone off the rails. And to give you another example, an HR professional in a food co-op was asked to facilitate a performance evaluation meeting between 2 individuals, manager and employee on their team. And these 2 had a history of power struggles going back years. The explicit collective power was evident in that meeting with 2 individuals with that as the management versus unions. We had 2 different explicit collective power entities, management and union. And the ways each side was sort of explicit with their decision-making power and the struggle that sort of emanated from both sides thinking that their power was more explicit than the other. The implicit collective power was evident in how each side spoke to each other. When each side presented their tensions and made their proposals, they postured themselves with vocal tones and word choices to express how strongly they want the changes to be made. And the facilitator in that situation used their explicit autonomous power to mediate the conversation by using an explicit decision-making process that both parties agreed to in advance, which included listening and mirroring the proposal and asking good questions. And the facilitator also used their implicit autonomous power through their vocal tones and body language and word choices that encouraged openness, validity of tensions, and a willingness to make changes. As a result, both sides were able to agree to a new explicit solution that moved the issue incrementally forward. And really the lesson learned from this scenario is that being aware of all 4 forms of power and how they're being used in a given situation can give us more avenues to move towards healthy power in action. All right, so that's the first application. As analysis, you can look at a situation and sort of break it down into those 4 forms of power. The second application of the power matrix is in active work conversations. We can use the power matrix as a template for how to take challenges that we're having together as a team, and through using collaborative communication practices, we can move attention forward by making something explicit that was implicit before, which also clarifies and improves the boundaries between the autonomous and collective power in that situation. Let me give you another example here. Co-CEO of a landscaping business noticed her colleague was exercising autonomous implicit power by not showing up to the regularly scheduled meetings. And while he and she were technically equals, she, as lead for administration, had the explicit power in the context of facilitating the meeting. And she also held a lot of implicit power in that she had more education, more formal education than that person, and a knowledge of the communication system she was introducing them to. The co-CEO, on the other hand, was a man and the most senior person in the company. And he was used to being a person with both the most implicit and explicit power in any situation, and did not want to have to participate in a system that would impose some accountability on him. If he had used the new accountability systems, he knew he would have to become clear and visible to the rest of the staff that he was avoiding making some necessary operational changes to free himself up to do CEO level work. Instead, he really let the little emergencies that came up every day continue to happen because they pulled him back into field work where he was more comfortable. So the male CEO attempted to exercise his implicit power and sat his co-CEO down to castigate her for introducing these new communication tools that he did not like. And in the past, when he had expressed discomfort with things or thrown tantrums, she'd kind of given in and fixed those for him. This had a lot to do with gender and seniority, as well as their respective personalities. But in this case, she used her explicit power as lead and the implicit and explicit collective power of the group who were on board with these new tools to stay the course and retrain the co-CEO to this new way of sharing power. So let's dig into this a little more specifically. We can use the power matrix as a template for the challenges we're having together as a team. And through using the collaborative communication practices, we can move a challenge forward by making something explicit that was previously implicit, and clarifies and improves the boundaries and relationship between the autonomous and collective power. So here's how it works in action. The process is to invite each team member to articulate what's on their mind with respect to a particular challenge, and get each of those things down as separate agenda items, separate them out. From there, you can have your facilitator pick one item at a time and help the team identify what will incrementally move that particular part of the challenge forward by creating clarity around who has autonomous power for what and where the collective power exists around that particular challenge. So the lesson here really is to get clear about how you want collective and autonomous power to play out in your team. And let's ground this in with a specific example again. So a team in a training organization I was working with recently had some conflict around who was in charge of the description of the courses on the website. The course producer thought they should have the power, and the comms director thought they should have that power, right? They were kind of in conflict over the same territory. Both parties got their hackles up and they dug in until we sat down and identified the challenges from each party's perspective, and then process them separately to clarity. In particular, the course producer raised the issue about that the web copy had to accurately reflect the course content, and the comms director named the need to lay out the course content in a user-friendly language. Both valid tensions, right? We started by processing the course producer's challenge and came up with an agreement by all that the comms director would use the actual course content and structure created by the course producer in their web copy to build the web copy off of that. Then we dug into the comms director issue and added clarity to their role as comms director that they had the final say on the web copy. Though they had to take input from others, and that was the collective power part of things. Folks could give input as part of the collective if it was offered, and so if that input was offered, they had to at least take that input and clearly choose to integrate it or not, with explicit reasons as to why they chose what they chose would benefit the organization. So simply broken down, splitting out different parts of a problem as perceived by the different people helps us identify ways forward that might otherwise remain stuck when we try to, not separating it out makes it much harder to process these things together. So with that, I'd love to hear from you, Jeanette, about your example of how you've used the power matrix.
Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Jeanette. I'm based in Philadelphia, and I'm currently in the Level 1 Collaborative Leadership Certification Program with Round Sky. So through the course, I've been able to think about an analysis of power in organizations and teams that supports collaborative leadership, and for me, just being together in a space. And have directly experienced a structure for meetings that I can bring into my own practice to fully engage everyone in that space. Something we learned recently that has stuck with me is that roles are explicit and therefore transferable. And for me, that comes together when I think about my own practice, where being inclusive and accessible are important parts of facilitation, and needing to ground that in a practice, like the agenda making processes I've learned through the Round Sky program, where everyone is asked explicitly to contribute rather than have the dynamic of tell us what you need when you need it, which can be intimidating and can potentially further existing dynamics. So a lesson learned for me is the clearer our roles can be, what we're expecting from each other or ourselves, the more focus we can bring to our discussion and our collective goals and use power effectively or generatively, as Cecile might say.
That's a great example, Jeanette. Thanks for sharing it. And it also kind of connects with my example in some ways. So I will share mine next. So my example is centered around something that is more uncomfortable than hierarchy to me. So, and I call that fake collaboration. So what is fake collaboration? I'm sure many people on the call have also experienced this. So for me at my previous workplace, we were a pretty small team of 5 at a nonprofit, and the executive director was a really nice person. He was very generous, very warm, and even despite that, it was really frustrating to work with him or for him because it was confusing. He wanted us to all be a team. He wanted us to work together. He didn't want us to see him as a mean boss, that he wanted to be kind of an equal. However, at the end of the day, when he had gone around to each of our desks to get our input on whatever thing it was, he often just did whatever he wanted. And it seemed like our opinions didn't matter at all, over and over again, not just one time. And so further, he would give us, when he gave us projects to work on, and he would say, do however you want, like just get the job done. You can have power over your work. But then he would come back to us and ask us to change the whole structure after that. Mostly in times of stress, this would get worse, but he would do this pretty often. And so what I cannot stand more than the sometimes dehumanizing aspects of hierarchy is this fake collaboration, or Cecile's also called it collaboration washing. It's inefficient. It feels pretty degrading. And after experiencing this many times, I was then called contradictory, so I decided to move on. So as I've learned the power matrix framework from after that experience, I can look back on this and see that indeed my boss had a lot of explicit autonomous power, and that at times he wanted to be on the collective, or even to be the power to be distributed to employees. He wanted collective power, but often at a moment's whim, he would take it back. And then he also had implicit power through his charismatic personality that often confused me and the rest of the team about the power plays. And I don't think he did this on purpose, but if he had been willing to learn about the power matrix and healthy collaboration, the work relationships he had may have been saved. So the lesson learned for me is that clarifying some of the expectations and where power was held, rather than tiptoeing around it or getting frustrated about it, would have been helpful at the time. So that's one of my experiences of power and using the power matrix. And Edith is on the call, and she wanted to share one as well. So if you want to unmute yourself, she's on the phone, so it won't be visual, but she can share that way. Make sure.
Hi, I'm also in the class with Brown Sky for the intro collab leadership class, and the power matrix has really helped because in our team, I'm in a organization, Seniors Wellness, and the problem with us is that we all get along so well that we do collective power very well. But we don't move forward with decision making sometimes because no one wants to disagree, or everyone's just okay with everybody else. So putting in place the roles has really helped, and just everyone starting to speak up more and really share their own perspective. So it's been really helping in lowering down the collective power, which I think has been helpful in just moving forward as the org.
Thanks for that example. I think that's some of the things we don't think about when we think about power, is how collective power can bog us down in a bad way, or it can also get degrading if we all have to make all of the collective power decisions together, then we don't get far. And autonomous power can feel really good. It doesn't have to be power over. It can be really important for a role to have power over your own work. So thanks for sharing that, Edith. And Sharon, even though you're doing whatever you're commuting. Okay, and from there I'll pass it back to Cecile to lead us into a breakout.
Yeah, thanks so much for all those really juicy examples. And we wanted to give all of us on the call here a chance to break out, and we'll be doing small groups, but we want to give you each a chance to surface and brainstorm solutions to your particular challenges using the power matrix to explore, what could be different. So we've got some specific instructions here. When you get into your breakouts, to introduce yourselves and choose an order. Each of you is going to have about 3 minutes to share your situation and look into solutions. And the specific prompt is, what uncomfortable situation or power dynamic have you experienced in the past, or maybe you're currently experiencing it, and discuss where it lands on the power matrix. And what kind of a solution would help get you to healthier power dynamics. And then once we've had you chance to share in your breakouts, we're going to come back and we'd love to hear from each group what some of the themes were that emerged out of the discussion. And we'll keep you posted on the timing in the breakout so you know when to switch. But it'll be a little written sign at the top of your screen, so just keep a note out for that. But for now, all you need to do is hit the accept request, join breakout room when it pops up on your screen.
Great. Perfect. So they each have, one group has 4, one group has 3.
Excellent. Okay. So we'll do 3 minutes per, and maybe the 3 group can run a little long.
Okay.
So I'll let you know when it's 3 minutes, and then we could go from there.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm going to copy and paste that.
Oh,
you're doing it? Okay, great. Mm-hmm. Good, thanks.
Those were great examples.
They were.
From all over the map.
Yeah, I know.
The matrix map.
Yeah, I really enjoyed hearing you break down that example with your former boss using the power matrix. Mm-hmm. It was almost like none of you had autonomous power.
Yeah, in some ways, besides him being the ED, I don't think he even had a lot of explicit autonomous power that he understood.
Yeah.
I think for him it was thinking that he just had power over everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Which now he does, because there's only him there.
Oh, really? Oh, no.
Everyone quit. So I know that wasn't just me.
No, it wasn't. Exactly, right? Yeah. That helps to be validated. I've been in situations before where I felt unjustly treated, and it was helpful after the fact, months later, to hear from other people that they also felt mistreated and likewise, chose to leave instead of addressing them, which is the sad thing, is that for the most part in so many of our work cultures, we don't have options. We don't, the only option is to leave, like stay and endure it or leave. And that can be just really demoralizing and, of course, very expensive for both the organization and the person who has to leave and find another job. Right. Only to walk into another workplace where the power dynamics are going to be screwed up as well, because this is not, it's commonplace for us to not know how to use power well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It really is.
So about 30 seconds to the top of 3 minutes.
Okay. And it looks like that that it's going to be 3. It's 3 and 3 now.
Okay.
So whatever happened, maybe a connection issue.
Yeah.
Although it might be good to give them the last 3 minutes or a couple minutes
To theme up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I think Edith's example is really interesting too. And I think that happens a lot in beginning teams. And it's often a good thing. Like, oh, we all get along so well. Everything's fine.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really create, then you don't have mechanisms to figure out how to work through the conflict when it inevitably does happen. So I think that's it's like a double-edged sword in some ways.
Yep.
Like, you're doing great, but then when things get stressful, then what do you do? Like, you don't have those things to support you.
Absolutely. And you know, the tendency can be so strong to want to keep it in that honeymoon phase, right? Or that phase of feeling good with each other, that it can lead to groupthink, like the lack of dissent, the lack of, oh no, that's going to cause harm because of XYZ. So not having the processes that enable us to surface that dissent in a way that still, you know, maintains and in fact strengthens that collective spirit of we're in this together is I think part of why, you know, what's needed in order to make the transition from that wonderful together space to a stronger together space that includes the capacity to dissent when it's really healthy to actually do that. Yeah.
Right. It does. You're totally right. Otherwise, you're just continuing a culture of no conflict is good.
Correct.
Conflict is not bad.
Unfortunately, so many of us have experienced
are very conflict averse.
Yeah,
culture.
and for good reason. You know, it's not usually conflict means something and someone is going to get hurt, and so it makes sense to me that we're averse, but unfortunately, it's not sustainable, right? I mean, fundamentally, each of us has unique perspectives, and, you know, having the opportunity to shine and to bring those forward is actually what's going to help us collectively be more healthy and more diverse and stronger as a team. But it's easy to say, it's much harder to do, right?
Yeah, it really is.
Okay, we are at 3 minutes again.
Okay, that's what I thought. I think your example about the co-CEOs is also pretty interesting. Like the gender aspect of it, that wanting to be in the fields. That's interesting. I think it's very common also.
Yeah.
Imagine it is with the gender dynamic, or probably would look very similar in a race dynamic as well.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe not. But I think we tend to live out those stereotypes in power.
Yeah.
Those themes of the world show up in our workplace often.
They sure do. Day by day. Yeah. What I found really interesting about that is that not much changed for the female co-CEO, except that she had an explicit set of tools. And she was clear for herself, and her team had gotten clear that these were helpful. And that enabled her to then go back to the co-CEO and say, this is what we're going to do. And to have that strength, that platform to stand on, so she didn't default to her former identity of just giving in and fixing things for him. yeah, that doesn't require years, right? That requires, just learning a set of processes and understanding why they're important and sticking to them. But having that something to stick to, I feel it's like a life buoy, in the middle of a storm at sea, I can hang on to it. And it's made a huge difference for me in my life when I've been faced with complex and conflicting situations to return to the concrete set of tools that I know will help, even if it's not what I'm used to doing.
Right. Has it been 3 minutes?
Almost. Got about 20 seconds left.
Okay. I'm going to encourage people to make connections and think of something you might share with the group.
Great. I like this question in the chat box too. It's a great question. That's another really common experience, is just folks not wanting to take up power and shunning it because whatever reasons. But with power comes accountability. Ideally, we have both authority and accountability over whatever is that clear parcel of power that you have.
Yeah. Maybe this debrief is a good time to address that question.
Cool.
Okay, I'm going to close all the rooms. Is it about
It's
time?
about a minute left, yeah.
Okay, it takes 60 seconds for people to come back, so I'll close them now.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope that was a fruitful discussion for you all. And we're going to take a few minutes now to hear from each group about what themes emerged. So I guess I'd like, if you are willing to speak for your group, if you would just unmute yourself and begin talking, that would be helpful.
And you do that by clicking, if you roll your mouse over your video, a little blue thing should pop up that says unmute, possibly. Or if you raise your hand, I'll unmute you.
Yeah, we can help.
As the host, I have those explicit powers or technical powers. Oh.
Yeah, if I can share for my group.
Great.
So we talked about a few different situations, and we all have very different places that we're working in right now. But definitely felt around or agreed on the implicit autonomous power and the example of just throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping something sticks, sort of how things have been working, and the common feeling of that's just kind of how it is in most places. So we shared that feeling.
Nice, thanks.
That reminds me of something that Cecile and I were reflecting on in the break of, Cecile, you had said in that CEO example, one of the most helpful things was not all of the dynamics had changed, not all the power dynamics, but that person, the woman who was a CEO, now had the tools to kind of manage it and new tools to manage it, to add to her tool belt of how she managed it in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I experienced it. The metaphor that came to mind was that sense of having a lifeboat or life ring, a life, whatever they call it, Thank you. That she could hang on to is concrete. She can come back to that set of practices, and that helped refine and change the fundamental dynamic between her and the male CEO. She didn't have to go, for years and do all this deep personal development work. Not that that's not important, but just having that simple set of tools enabled her to stand her ground and not keep repeating her former implicit autonomous behavior of just giving in to the male CEO because of his gender and seniority. Yeah. All right. Anyone else from the other group want to pipe up and share anything that came up for you, including questions or comments?
I want to share, this is Edith again. One of the questions that came up for our team was how do you balance out power for people that are more quiet, even though you're allowing that platform to talk, but they're not completely utilizing that power, or don't feel comfortable or safe still?
Nice, lovely question, Edith. So I guess off the cuff, I would offer that I'm an introvert myself, so it's not my first thing to want to step up and speak. But having the opportunity over and over and over again, so practice, it's a bit like helping them to build the muscles and to build the confidence that they are going to be safe. So there's two things: having a good, clear set of practices that is safe, right? So the person who's timid and does not want to step forward, they need to step forward into a safe communication space where they're going to be heard, they're not going to be castigated, they're not going to be interrupted, right? Those things are really important to help build that trust, and then repeated over days and weeks and months and years, that ability to step forward and be more expressive can naturally emerge.
And I think I'll just add to that is there's something about people knowing, sometimes if there's not a structure set in place for people to show up, then they have to forge their own path and interrupt people or be a little forceful, which doesn't work for everybody. So having a clear pathway for people to engage, whether it's in a meeting, whether it's a communication style, having that clear pathway is really helpful. If you have an issue with whatever, you bring it up here, and then you are heard, and that's processed in whatever way it needs to be processed. Maybe not everything is sunshiny after that, but at least it's clear how to do that, and that saves some of the effort from figuring it out as well. I don't know if that's helpful. If that group, or Edith, if you have further questions or further examples, or we could dive in a little bit more as well. So feel free to unmute yourself. And that, while you think of your question, that question is really connected to the one that is in the chat box in some ways. And Cecile, do you want to take a crack at that? Is it common to have fellow worker owners not to want to take on power? For example, the amount of people who sign up for the board of directors has been lessening in recent years. How do you address and correct this power aversion, if that is even the right way to phrase it?
Yeah, fantastic question. And yeah, I would call it a power aversion. And you're not alone. So I see this happen in a range of groups. There's a couple things going on here, I think, and curious to hear from the rest of you on this front. But one is, with more power comes accountability. And ideally, when you take on power, you receive both the authority and the autonomy to deliver on that, but also the accountability to get it done. And so, particularly for a role like the board of directors, the accountability involved in being on the board may be more than people want to take on. And if that's the case, breaking those roles down into smaller and smaller chunks can help. Like if I'm only taking on this much instead of this much, it might help. Making what is expected of the board of directors very clear and explicit will also help. And the third thing is, if the board doesn't have a clear set of collaborative communication practices, they may have heard, and I'm making this up, so have no idea in your case in particular, that the meetings are contentious, they drag on forever, nothing really happens, and so who wants to go join that kind of a space? And so one of the biggest things you can do is institute a clear set of collaboration practices that has the board be efficient, effective, fun, engaging, and turn that dynamic around so that it's a place that's inviting to want to join in, and that people don't feel like they have to take on all of that themselves, by themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And boards are volunteer. So having those clear expectations for volunteer specific roles is so important. Like, this amount of hours, this range of hours is expected from you. These are the roles that I'm expecting for you to play out. So that explicit power is so important there. And giving them autonomous power over that work. We could go so far with that. So feel free to keep putting your questions in the chat box. I'm going to share a little bit more about that CLCP1, that Collaborative Leadership Certification Program. So if you're thinking about a training or a way to develop your own leadership around power and around your own ability to facilitate a team, this is something you can think of. So I'll just share a few things about that. So on the screen, you should be able to see our website. And I'm going to scroll on up. It's a nice lengthy page. So I want to take a few minutes just to navigate our website for you so you can find this. So because we have a lot of information. So the first thing is that wherever you are on our website, you can always come up here and press apply today, and it takes you to this page. Like I said, it's our core strategic initiative, so it's pretty important to us that people can reach it. And so you'll notice up here, the URL is roundskysolutions.com/CLCP1. That stands for Collaborative Leadership Certification Program, Level 1. That's our first level. And you'll see as I scroll a little bit, applications are due on April 3rd. You're at the introductory session today, so that's on there as well. And you've been here to fill this out. You already know what that is. And if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see a little bit more about our philosophy and what we believe leadership, our dreams of leadership, and what we work with, basically. And you can read that if you like, if you're curious. And I'll scroll a little bit more. You'll find the benefits there. And you can read these on your own time. And there's also some things that our students have said in the past. So you can see that. It's not an exhaustive list, but it's some of them. Like Noemi said that learning to use collab tools has dramatically increased my level of confidence in addressing complex situations in my organization and with our clients and partners. So feel free to read those and click through. And then as you scroll down, you'll see here what's included. Who is this for? It's for managers, directors, members of cooperatives, nonprofits, boards, businesses, consultants to use these tools with their team, small business owners, or just leaders that are in a collective working collaboratively. So it's very versatile. And again, that application date is April 3rd, and then this course starts the week of April 29th. So if you scroll down, this part is one that I really want to show you. If you want to learn about each of the 10 sessions, you'll see this bar with a plus sign. And if you click the plus sign, it opens up to each of the 10 sessions. So you can read this on your own time. It's a lot of information. So like mapping out your team, clarifying who does what. That's the session that Jeanette and Edith just finished, which is one of my favorites. and around accountability and all kinds of things. So feel free to read this if you're curious about each of the 10 sessions. And then this is closed usually. So you can click here to figure out like what the steps are to do this, to apply, and then what happens next if you're curious, if you'd like to know the full picture. And then some of the costs and things are in here, which I'll go over. And then at the very bottom is the application. And you'll just fill out these. Each of these is pretty simple. There's one big question about what do you hope to get out of the level 1 certification program? So it's there. And questions about financial assistance. If you need that, please just put that in there and let us know. We'll see what we can do. And then submit your application, click that. So that's about how to navigate the course. And I want to share a few things about what our students have said. So, but before that, I like to think of the training in 2 different tracks. So the first track is building up your own personal skills and leadership qualities. So that's self-work. And the second part is adding those tangible tools or that life vest to understand how to create generative, healthy, and powerful, generatively powerful leadership. So I want to share just a few things with you that our students have said about the program. So the first one, a lot of our students have noticed that they are able to facilitate better meetings that are truly collaborative, meaningfully collaborative. I think a way that we get our people to show up in meetings is to have meaningfully collaborative meetings. So meaning that if they say something, it's meaningful. It's not to nothing. And so in the course, you'll find the tools and tactics to do that. And one of our students wrote about this during our meetings. Some of our members would not express their opinions and great ideas might be missed. I needed to create an environment that would welcome these opinions, and I wanted to encourage all the members to voice their thoughts and opinions on the subject without hesitation. So after taking the course, that was one of the things he wanted out of it. And after taking the course, he found this. So he said, not that. Right here. He said that during our meetings, some of our members, having practiced facilitating during 2 sessions, it has helped me to understand and be able to use the tools and concepts that I've learned within the course. Applying the standard meeting practice in my team was great. And he told me in conversation that he found that people were able to bring up ideas that were conflicting, which he hadn't experienced before in his team. And that's something that he wanted, which is kind of a funny thing for a leader to want conflict in their team, but he found that that would bring out a lot of good solutions. And so another student had said at the end of the course that that their entire outlook on the world has changed because of this training, every aspect of it, which is a really big thing to say. This is her quote. Using the standard meeting practice and sharing this way of doing things with others energizes me and enlivens a renewed sense of purpose in helping to change the world through inclusion and appreciation, one conversation at a time. So I think those are really important things to be able to know how to do. So now to another point of another learning point from the course. Many people say that they have strengthened their collective decision making, and your ability to facilitate collective decision making with these tools and tactics will become more effective and rapid, but without losing the importance and the skills of including all the voices, which is important for meaningful collective power. So you'll find that your ability has expanded to hone in all the nuances of facilitating your team to a collective decision making done well. And you'll learn our tool, which is called integrative consent, and how to you'll practice that in the course to work through some of the nitty-gritty details. And so what one of our students, you can see on the screen, one of our students said, knowing how to navigate conflict and work through arising tensions while honoring all voices is valid and vital to the process of a better outcome benefiting everyone can be very challenging. Being able to facilitate more effectively through those tensions and choosing not to see them as harmful to progress, but instrumental in movement forward, has enhanced other skills I have practiced the last 15 years. So that is pretty powerful. Just another tool to the tool belt around collective decision making. And I'll share just a few more things, and we're going to wrap up in about 10 minutes for those that are staying on the call. So the next thing that I think is really important for generating healthy power is around accountability. So I'll just share what one of our students reflected. In a shared power setting, we don't always know who's holding the power for any particular decision, and we don't really want to talk about it for fear of insulting each other. Some people had mentioned that on the call today. And this person finds that facilitating meetings when shared power dynamics are at play to be particularly challenging, especially when I might be the person with the most authority and when those leaders appear to me to be ineffective in their roles. Kind of that example, like Cecile said earlier, around this self-fulfilling prophecy. And so one of our main objectives of this course is to bring really clear accountability to teams and help people both increase their own accountability capacity and their teams. And so just short and sweet, this person shared that the ops report, one of our tools, really helped them track their tasks and their team and to hold people accountable. It's kind of a tricky thing in self-organized teams to hold other people accountable, but this kind of facilitates that for you. And I'm going to skip over a few so we have some time to go over logistics, but I'll send out this slideshow for those listening and also the recording. So I'll skip that. So one of the last things I want to say about what students have said is that they find that this is not just applicable in one context, but again and again. So the practical application of CoLab and working with others has been life-changing for me. Understanding the power matrix has changed my entire mindset as a parent, as a partner, as a leader, and as an organizer. I think that's true for me as well. It shows up in so many different aspects of life. So for those of you who are curious about how to get involved and what are the next steps and the logistics, if you're really interested in the details now. So the cohorts are about 4 to 7 people. They're designed to be in a group setting so you can get through some of this stuff together. Community is really important. It's over 10 weeks who meet online for 2 hours a week, and it's on Zoom just like we are now. And people have the opportunity to facilitate and then receive personalized feedback through that, which is really effective for practicing it before you put it on your team. And then in between each session, you have a course platform and forums in order to connect and get all the information that you need. And the time commitment is about 3 to 5 hours, including the 2-hour sessions per week. And then last couple of things, the course starts the week of April 29th. So the schedule is determined by the availability of the cohort. So you'll learn about when the sessions are once you apply. And the application is April 3rd, but if you apply by tomorrow, you'll get a minimum $400 scholarship just as a thank you for like an early bird scholarship. And if we have more scholarship funding available as well for those who need it, and we also accept payment plans. So with that, thank you everyone for being on the call today. It's been really rich. Thanks Jeanette and Edith for spending the time talking about power and sharing your experiences. And we'll open the mics basically to say any last things and thank yous. If you're having trouble unmuting yourself, that's okay. Just thank you everyone for being here. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions via email. Okay.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Great to have you
now.
here. Bye-bye.
Oh, did you want to say something, Jeanette? No. Okay. Okay.
All right. Take care.